welcome. I'm not surprised that there are so many people, and I know half of them, they're stuck in the traffic, but they can't wait any longer. That you're here. I promised you a while ago that we're going to have him here as our guest speaker. I'm glad that after a long time, because of his busy schedule, we were able to invite him and we could arrange the time for him to be here. And I'm sure all of us were going to say it's well worth the wait after we hear him talk. I know majority of you, and I should say all of you, know him really, really well, but I just want to give you a very brief bio of Pejman. Pejman is the founding manager partner of Pear, an early-stage venture capital firm with over 125 million under management. Pejman was named by Forbes in 2012 as one of the most successful angel investors. He has over 15 years of experience investing in early-stage high-tech startups such as Dropbox, Gusto, Guardian Health, DoorDash, Mimibox. I have a problem with pronouncing this one, and many others. To honor the road he traveled as an immigrant, he received a 2014 Ellis Island Medal of Honor Award. Among other distinctions, World Magazine named him one of the most powerful players in tech. Pejman covered 3 FIFA World Cups as sport journalist and played soccer for the biggest clubs in Iran. Pejman, join.
Merci. Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. It's great to be here. From the size of this almost all Iranian crowd, I'm sure it takes 2 hours to say goodbye to everyone, so I'll try to make it brief. And special thanks to the team at Parse Equality. I'm really honored to be here. It's really a humbling experience. Thank you again, all of you. I want to start by showing you a picture of a very proud moment in my life. I was one of the 100 immigrants to receive the Ellis Island Medal of Honor in 2014 for my contribution to the United States. It was such an honor for me because I feel like America gave me an amazing opportunity, and anything I've given back feels impossibly small by comparison. But as much as this moment meant to me, this picture isn't the one that defines who I am. This one is. This is me when I was homeless, sleeping on the floor in an attic above a yogurt shop. It was 1992, few months after I arrived in US from Iran. You see, when I first came to United States, I had only $700 in my pocket. I didn't speak any English, and I didn't have anyone to lean on. And I had a girl I was completely in love who was in Tehran still. And I was so worried that I would lose her, so I spent all of my money calling her on the phone. It was very expensive in 1992 to Canada. There was no Skype, no internet phone, so it cost like $5 a minute, and I had to bring a whole bag of quarters with me. So it didn't take long before I was totally out of money. And this I knew was not the way to get the girl I love. In Tehran, I had been a well-respected sports journalist, hosting the most popular sports radio talk show in Iran, but that didn't carry any weight in America. So I got a job at a car wash in San Jose, and I'm telling you, I was the best car washer in the entire world. I took so much pride in that job, and the little money I made, I used to pay for English classes at a local community in a college. And for a while, the main thing I tried to do was just to survive. I left the car wash and got a job at a yogurt shop, and somehow I convinced the owner to let me sleep in an attic. This picture is me sleeping in the floor in that attic. And this yogurt shop was in Redwood City. It was so hot up there, no air circulation at all. I remember once late night I was going up there and the police stopped me because they thought I was breaking in, and who could blame them? So there I was, homeless, sleeping upstairs in a yogurt shop. But I have to say, it was this transformative experience. Instead of feeling like I was completely cornered, I felt I could do anything. I just kept thinking the same thing. Wow, if I can make this work, I can make anything work. And I'll never forget one night in particular, there was a Persian television program. I was watching it, and there was an advertising for Medallion Rug Gallery in downtown Palo Alto. They were hiring salespeople. And I thought this would be a pretty good way to make some money. Why not go for it? So I pick up the phone, and the owner, Mr. Amidi, answered. And he asked me, have you ever sold rugs? I said, no. Have you ever sold furniture? I said, no. And have you sold anything in your life? I said, no. I said, why did you call? This is for a rug salesperson. So and just before he hung up, I pleaded with him, how can you say no to someone you haven't even met? There was this long pause, and then he said, fine, come in. The next day I went to see him, and I got the job. By end of the week, I moved out of the attic. The first thing I learned at Medallion Rug was Persian carpets are very expensive. I knew, but I didn't know cost so much, tens of thousands of dollars. The second thing I learned was that most customers have no way knowing whether they are being taken advantage or not. They didn't know where this carpet is made, what are the material, how much it should cost. So selling a rug requires a lot of trust between a salesperson and the customer over there. So that's why I try to do. I just try to make a good relationship with all of my customers at Medallion Rug Gallery. And over the next few years, that's exactly what I set out to build. I became friends with my customers. I went to their homes. I spent time with their families. I got to know them. And I closed sales, a lot of sales. 1 year, my best year, I sold $8 million worth of carpets. After a few years, I learned that almost all of my customers are in technology businesses. And I was witnessing an amazing community destined to change the world. And I wanted to be part of it. And so in addition to showing my customers rugs, I started asking questions. Little by little, I learned about the world around me. The companies, the technology, the incredible growth. And then one day I walked to my boss's office, the owner of the rug store, and told him, we need to start a tech venture fund. He was a wonderful man, and he listened to me very carefully. And when I was done making my pitch, he agreed to partner with me. I put everything I had saved into our fund, and we started making investments. This is exactly end of 90s, but early 2000. Our first challenge was convincing people that we are very serious. Most of the founders we met were coming from employments of very fancy offices on Sand Hill Road from venture capitalists. When they come into our office, they were expecting the same kind of polished elegance. When they met us, instead we served Persian tea in the back of a rug store. It's like a movie. That was actually our magic. Persian tea was the icebreaker. It gave me the opportunity to get to know them, and for them to get to know me. There was a magic in the tea, a chance to strip away all the phony stuff, to be real and honest and human with each other. And I think that made all the difference. In early days, we made some really bad investments. I think if you look at the history, maybe I have the worst record in the history of the first year investments. I made investment in companies that were shut down after 3 months. But I didn't give up. The other amazing thing about those days was where their office was. This is the rug gallery. This is where people would come to pitch us. You can see we had these giant, expensive rugs on the wall, and we served Persian tea. And these people would be coming from meetings on Sand Hill Road, driving down to Palo Alto, and arrive here. At first, they almost have thought they had the wrong address. But in the end, it didn't matter. People gave me the benefit of the doubt. They didn't judge me at all. I closed the deal with Andy Rubin in that room, in that corner. He went on to create Android. I closed the deal with the founders of Dropbox in that room. We were the first investor in that company. Dropbox worth $10 billion today. And I suppose you shouldn't be surprised that we did it by focusing on and supporting Iranian founders. When Arash, the co-founder of Dropbox, walked into the store, we didn't connect by talking about cloud storage. We got there by talking about food, our parents, our home, Tehran. His family was from Kashan, family. We made a quick bond, the kind that everyone in this room will understand. A bond over culture, a bond through community. And a few years ago, in 2013, I teamed up with Mar Hershenson and we started Pear Ventures. People ask me all the time, how do you spot a winner, Pejman? What is it that you're looking for? And I tell them, it's all about the people. Every founder is different, of course, but there are certain traits that are common among all the best ones. And they're kind of the things you can spot really, really early, before they're running a billion-dollar company. One of the first things I look for is this founder chasing big ideas or they're really solving a real problem? I just don't believe Silicon Valley is run on big ideas versus I think really Silicon Valley is run by the founders who are solving a real problem in a big market, and there's a huge distinction between them. Most of the time, the companies who are taking big tasks early on, they burn out in the first 1 or 2 years. But the companies who are really focusing on getting one task done, like connecting passengers to drivers, storing files in the cloud, or creating chat rooms entrepreneurs can talk to each other, or employees can talk to each other. These are the companies that become Uber, Slack, or Dropbox of the world. So if you are an entrepreneur here and you want to start something, don't chase really big ideas. Find something that is close to you, the problem you want to solve, and you're passionate about to build the product that a lot of people want to use it. The other things I think I look for founders who are taking big risks on behalf of their ideas. I love founders who are very self-confident, but at the same time they question themselves, kind of paranoid in a healthy way. I'm making bets next to them, so I want them to take risk on their behalf. This might be the most important one, and being an entrepreneur is kind of emotional roller coaster. You wake up in the morning and you think this is the best thing you do in the world. By noon, you want to get another job because you're just frustrating. So you have to have a tough skin. I remember a couple of years ago, I had an entrepreneur came to me and he had a very difficult time to raise money, and he told me, "Wow, Silicon Valley is like a war zone." But I grew up in Iran. At the time, there was war, so for me, it was very odd that he's comparing against the war zone. And I told him in a story, and when I always wanted to start something when I was young. I was in high school. I remember, and many of you remember that during Iran and Iraq war, Iraqi jets were coming over Tehran, trying to bomb Tehran, but at many nights, because of the anti-aircraft Iranian system, they couldn't come low enough to drop the bomb, so they were breaking the sound barrier, and that shattered the windows. And I had this idea, maybe I should go and buy a lot of tape and go sell it to stores. So one day I started at the beginning of Valley Astra street all the way till night, going one by one stores and said, Iraqi jets are coming tonight, and it's going to shatter the windows. So if you put these tapes, it will protect you. And guess how many people buy? How many tapes I sold?
2.
0. I said 0. And I think the next day I gave up. And then that's come to my next point, that the best founders are really, really focused on what they do and persistent. Maybe if I was a good entrepreneur, I would have tried different street. Maybe I tried a different color of the tape or different sales speech. That's why I'm not an entrepreneur, I'm an investor. So the point I want to bring up is, really good founders, they don't give up under any circumstances, and this is what it takes in Silicon Valley. I think this one is very important, vision. So I look for founders who have a vision, long-term vision, and it's very confusing. Most of the founders, they think they have a vision, but they have a goal of raising another round or just building a product. So there's a distinction. If you're starting a company, think about what you want to achieve in the next 5, 10 years, and be very honest and very truthful to it. At the end of the day, what I want to bring it up, that it's not a perfect formula by any means. I've made really bad investments, and I've seen a lot of incredibly gifted people fail. But in the end, I think the reason I connect so well with founders is that we both have this thing inside us that tells us to never give up, no matter what. And this belief that there is nothing we can't do. That's why all these years I still look back at those nights on the floor of the attic as the nights that really defined who I am. I think back to the kid that I was back then, living in circumstances that most people cannot imagine for themselves, but filled with so much hope and promise and possibility. The kid who would happily spend every dollar he had to call a girl he didn't want to lose. And by the way, we just celebrated our 23rd anniversary with two beautiful girls, two beautiful children. And I think this is another reason why it pays to never, ever give up. Thank you very much. I'm happy to take questions. I think the companies that I had an opportunity that I didn't invest, if you think about the failure in what I do, is just mainly either I invest in the companies that fail, or the companies I had an opportunity but I didn't invest. Facebook was one of them. I think when I look at those companies, I overanalyze situation too much. So rather than getting to know the founders, I try to really analyze the business. And especially when you invest early stage, there's not much data to look at. So I try to get to know founders really well. But in those circumstances that I failed to make it investment was about just overanalyzing many things. And I especially in the beginning, I thought that everything should be next to each other in order to build the company, but that's not true. I spend a lot of time to get to know founders. I think I like founders who are really truthful to the problem they're solving. Normally when founders have 10 ideas, narrow it down with 3 and pick one is a red flag for me. I actually like people who live through the problem they want to solve. I spend a lot of time to get to know the teams. If I like teams who are rock climbing every week for the last 4 years, or they went to high school together, or they play basketball, or they work at Google. I like teams who are capable to attract a lot of talent. But I think one thing, I had this slide but wasn't here, I think for me it's very important to pick the founders, especially the CEOs who are captain of the ship. I think if you're a captain of the ship, you're the last one who leave. I like founders who think the company is much bigger than them, so they put companies, employees, their team above them. And it's very easy when you talk to this. I think there's a fine line between ego and confidence, and I think you can spot that very early on. The question is, what does it take today to be? We started with $2 million at that time. My portion was, Mr. Amity says we started with $2 million and you put 10%. I said, Mr. Amity, I don't have $200,000. I really didn't have it. And he said, okay, we subtract every month from your commission. So he made me work harder. So I sold more carpets for him in order to he's a very smart man. So I think it doesn't take that much money to be. I think when I started this in 2000, there were not too many tools like today. I don't know if you're familiar with a lot of blogs today, there's a lot of information. There are angel lists, you can see a lot of companies over there. There's a lot of conferences you can go, there's a lot of data. At that time, it wasn't. So I think if you want to be an angel investor or you want to make investment, there are so many great places to start. I encourage you to look at angel list. Angel lists allow you to just even make it $1,000 investments. And the law has changed. It wasn't, the law has passed last few years that people can make these small investments in small businesses. So I think you just basically don't need too much money. You just need to making sure you understand the ecosystem, you understand where your deal flow are, and kind of create a pattern who you want to work with, what stage you want to invest.
As you know, I'm a founder, and the first question I have is what brand of tea has the magic?
Yes.
Never said so. But on a serious note, typically people say, luck favors the prepared mind. So there's an element of luck involved. For sort of pre-Series A founders like myself, what do you think you could do to make sure that you're prepared when luck knocks on your door?
Yeah, it's a good question. Going back to tea first, one of our founders is Mehdi Samadi. He's a bright guy, PhD from Carnegie Mellon. He's from Shiraz, my wife's from Shiraz, and then we both love tea. His company is working out of my office, and I said, Mehdi, you figure out the most complex algorithm in the world, but we couldn't figure out what type of tea to get. Why don't you research to get the best tea? And he came back after 2 weeks, he found a tea in Iran, and they sent it to us from Lahijan, and it's just the best tea. So if you come, I'll give it to you. I agree with you. I think you have to be lucky. When I met Dropbox founders, there's an incubator in the valley called Y Combinator that I think you're familiar with it. Every 6 months today, they get around 100 to 150 companies. They help them to just grow, and they stay there for 2.5 months. And after 2.5 months, investors go over there to meet these teams. Dropbox was one of the teams from Y Combinator, but at that time, there were only 8 teams. Today there are 150 teams. Every 6 months there was 8 teams, and maybe 30, 40 people in 2007 were going to meet them. Today like 1,000 of people go. I remember the day I was supposed to go, I had a headache and I said maybe I shouldn't go today, but I went over there and I met Drew and Arash. So, had I not gone through that, maybe I never met Arash. So I think you have to be ready for the luck, and I think if you really work hard, I think one day will happen. I think you have to be just, I think for preparing for the founders, for the luck, I don't know there's so much luck in the beginning, but just making sure you build a great team. I think, I don't believe in any business you can build anything solo. I think just very picky when you hire. I think spend a lot of time. I think one of the hardest thing we as an investor can solve if the team cannot work together. Anything else we can solve. I think we can change the product, we can raise money, we can move around, but when the team cannot work together, especially founders, it's just really, really hard. So I encourage you, if you're picking co-founders or team members, make sure the bar is really, really high. 2011-12, I felt that a lot of investors who are raising venture capital, they're moving upstream, and nobody is helping founders on ground zero. And I felt there's a huge opportunity to build an institution can help founders early on. The way it was set up like 40, 50 years ago when Hewlett Packard started, venture capitalists, in a way they were a co-founder of the companies. So I wanted to partner with somebody who built companies. I never built companies, and Mar, my partner, she started 3 companies. I was investing in a company, and we had the same philosophy about people, about work and family life. So it was a great partnership.
How did you identify the areas that you needed to develop in order to become successful as you moved on? Do you believe in coaches and mentors? How did you find that the ways or the peoples that you needed to connect in order to become more successful?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think, you have to realize at one point of my life, I was on the most important street, the most important era in technology, that was University Avenue, but I was a carpet salesperson. So I realized I can pass by this opportunity, or I can realize there's an opportunity, I can grab it. I decided I want to be part of it. Prior to me, Medallion Rock Gallery has 200 salespeople. Same customer, same home, same carpet, same place. But to me, was just getting to know people around me and realizing this is a huge opportunity. I just need to educate myself. And then I started to make a really good advisory team from my clients. And that was my pitch to Mr. Amidi, that he said, okay, how do we figure out these are good companies? And I said, I showed him a list of 10 people and said, these are like the most respected people in technology. They're my friends. I sold them carpets. I go to their home and they're willing to help us. So surrounding yourself with advisors and mentors is just really, really important. And throughout the last 2 years, I had like few coaches and mentors. I always go to them. Even now, some even simple questions I have, I just want to rely on somebody else. So it's great to surround yourself by people who can give you great advice. One thing I noticed when I came to US, that a lot of people give wrong advice to people who come because of their own experiences, and actually mislead people who come. And most of the time it's discouraging. So don't listen to these. I think if you're willing to make a great life here, just go for it. People come, immigration is hard, finding a job is hard, and just don't listen to these things. And you know, I had a very thick skin, didn't listen to these things, but I know some people just because somebody else came 6 years earlier and had this problem here, they generalized the whole thing and said this is going to happen to you, but that's not true. I just believe in yourself. I think great things will happen.
Just to add to what you just mentioned, one of the first photos that you showed was a photo of you as an immigrant receiving that medal. I'm sure as someone with Iranian background like you, as an immigrant coming in, you've gone through some patches of some difficulty, you know, racism, this and that and everything. With these days, like since a week ago, that America has changed a little bit of anti-Semitic, anti-immigrant and Muslim things happening. How do you suggest to people like us, the next generation, who want to make great things happen in Silicon Valley, but we're a little bit, maybe a little bit afraid, or like we're not certain of the future? How did you go through those problems?
You know, I agree. I think America is changing now. I think to me last week, I mean, the result of the election to me was shocking because I didn't know there were so many angry people in the country. And I think living in California, maybe we're somehow detached from reality, what's going on here. I think somehow 200 years or 250, 40 years ago, everybody who came to America was illegal immigrant. So I was an illegal immigrant at some point. But I think the DNA of this country is just support for entrepreneurs and immigrants. So I don't think the course will change. It might be bump, but I think you have to have a thick skin and go through it. And I think Silicon Valley is a great place. If you look around and everybody's immigrant, most of the people, most of the families I worked are immigrant over there. So I'm not worried about that. It's going to be very difficult to be an immigrant, especially our community, which is very smart, a lot of history before. I'm just making sure that we add value to the whole ecosystem and work hard and create value. People recognize it.
Hi. And when you invest in a company, what else do you give the founders that pitch to you other than money?
Sure. I think we built a firm that created an ecosystem and community for our founders. So we become one of our portfolio companies. They're surrounded by our team. We have an advisory team who are expert in a variety of different subjects. We sit down with the founders and we create an 18 months or 24 months operations plan. We walk them through it. We're really good at helping founders raise the next round. We're very good at recruiting. If you need engineers, you need a board of advisors, you need a designer. So I think you become part of an ecosystem, and any different angles will try to help you. And a lot of information is on our website, you can read it. I think the capital is just everywhere. I think that's the least value any investor can provide. I think the question is just, what is the characteristic of Iranian founders? I think if you look at historically, you know, we had ethnicity now, Farabi, I think, and so the science and math, it has, you know, old roots in our culture and community. So and I think people are very, very strong. I don't know if you know or not, but Stanford PhD program for electrical engineering at Stanford, the highest acceptance every year for the last 23 years is from Sharif University in Iran. So they outperform Stanford, Harvard, MIT, Oxford, you name it. So that's a great indication. There's so many amazing Iranian founders. And the other one, I think, once you immigrate from Iran, you come from a different culture, from a different language, different background. The adjustment you make here, if you're not able to do it, it's just very hard. So by default, people who come here, start a company, already started a journey. So I think when you're coming here, you adjust to food, to culture, your friends, and so on. It's just already you're an entrepreneur in a different way in your life. If we invest in Iranian ecosystem, Iran, I think we love to, but I think it still is very gray. So we can't touch it. We cannot even advise because of the embargo. If you look at Iranian ecosystem and startup, is just exploding because there are, I don't know, 30, 40 million people have mobile phone. The bandwidth is there, and it's so much disruption needs to be happen. The latest is the equivalent of Uber just raised $20 million in Iran, a company called Snap. So there's a huge opportunity over there. I look forward in the future that Iranian company can become global, and I think we have the capacity and capability. the Iranian market is so big now that most of the founders are focusing on the Iranian market. But I have no doubt, given the right infrastructure and support, the next Skype can come out of Iran. I mean, if you look at it, they have much more difficult task that founders here. It's much easier to start a company here than Iran, but it's still companies are growing. I mean, they're pretty amazing companies that are have built huge teams that are making a lot of money. I think for us, in order to get that, at least for our firm, we want to see first, legally we can get involved in Iran. Second, we see the kind of the founders that they can build global companies not focusing on the Iranian market. Yeah, we are a team of 5. 3 of us are women. Nida is here. My partner Mar is woman. So I think I can speak of our fund that majority of our partners are women. So I think that's a really good sign. I think the world here in Silicon Valley is changing. I think over 30% of our founders are women, which is like staggering numbers in terms of the percentage of other portfolio companies. And this is the important part. We're not investing in a woman founder because she's woman. We are investing in her because she's the best at what she does. And that's really, really important. I think for us, there is no difference between men and women founders. We just try to get the best. And the companies who founders are women, they're the best at what they do. We didn't pick them because they're women. It's the same way we pick founders, men, they're men. We just want to get the best out of it. I think it's changing. I agree. Historically, this hasn't been the case, but I think it's just changing.
How do you do it? Making friends with your clients and turning them to committed customers. Way back
when I was selling carpets, talking about carpets was the least thing I was talking about. It was just all about building relationship. We didn't get to know them, talk about myself, listen to them. I think they open up, and I think I was taking the taste of each person. I think, when I was going to people with different background, they were interested in variety of different things. So you have to pay attention to your surrounding. For example, I was going through people's home and I saw, wow, every car they have is gray, and the whole house is gray. So it was obvious to me they like gray. So, and it was happening in the carpets, they'd be gray. So you see these signs around you, but you can't just pass it. You just have to pay attention to those things. So I think part of it is just getting to know them and really let them open up about the topics they want to talk about.
Does that mean you were genuinely making friends, or you were actually looking for opportunities?
First I was selling carpets. I was just going to people's home to sell carpets, but when we became friends, we became really friends, and I think these people helped me to really build my career. One of our biggest company called Branch Metrics. I think you should check them out. These are 3 students from Stanford Business School. When we invest them, they were still students at Stanford, and now today they're in 2 billion phones. Out of 250 million phones in the country, they touch 245 million phones every day. So it's becoming a massive company. When we invested in a completely different idea that didn't work. And before that, their idea and the product was Fitbit for dog. Just a crazy bad idea. Just Fitbit on dog, and it didn't work. And when we invested, there was a completely different idea, but we loved the team. And they pivoted to be Branch Metrics. So some people fail, but I think if you're not truthful to failure, if you don't understand you're failing, you can continue building Fitbit for dog for 10 years. So you have to understand at some point that this doesn't work and move to something else. In the venture capital business, most of the companies you invest don't work. That's the bulldog law. So it just doesn't work. So the rate of failure is really, really high. You hope and you invest in the companies to have really outperform and become like a jackpot. So I think when we invest early on, we actually don't think about the rate of return. We just want to make sure that this company become a category-defining company in their space. And if they can do it, it could be a huge return. But people who invested in some companies early, sometimes they get 1,000 or 2,000x return. Like Peter Thiel invested in Facebook at $5 million valuation. So he owned 10% of the company, which is today $350 billion. He sold his shares throughout the year, so he doesn't own 10% of it, but that's the return some people get. We typically invest in early stages. So, and we define it at either pre-seed and seed. Pre-seed is where there are one or two founders, there's a technology, you might have a prototype, you might not have a prototype. That's pre-seed bucket. The seed bucket is just you have a product market fit. So that means you have a technology, you have a product, and some people are using it. So these are the two buckets we invest, which is a lot of risk. This concept here that people steal your ideas, you have to sign NDA, that doesn't happen here. So don't worry about that if you have an idea. I think if you don't have people to execute the idea is worthless. So I feel that some people come and say, okay, I can't talk to you because I think you take my idea. I said, I can't do what you do. So I think be mindful about that. I think educate yourself about the market you're going in, have a deep understanding of the problem you're solving. You have to be very passionate about building a product and making sure you really understand your users. Don't do things on the surface. I think this is your life. If you want to do something extraordinary. Don't just settle in for some mediocre things. And if you're not ready, don't do it. This is very difficult to be entrepreneur. At the same time, I think the best job anybody in the world can have. We actually have this slogan at our fund that investors don't create future, entrepreneurs do. So our doors are all open always to come for people who come and surprise us. I think it just looks really smart if you say I know it, but really nobody knows. And if you look at history, look at the biggest company ever created. Nobody knew this company going to be big. Who knew Facebook was going to be big or Google? And some people, I believe when the market is hot, it's already too late to invest and already too late to start anything. So I really like founders who see future before us, people who can imagine what's going to happen in the future and really stick to it. Well, I think a little bit more detail, I think what's going to stay here is artificial intelligence. I think there will be a lot of companies will be built on top of artificial intelligence. But specifically what, I really don't know. The question is if you invest in any particular space of technology. No, we're actually very agnostic about it, because if you look at our portfolio companies, it seems we don't know what we're doing because we have to invest in everything. but the thought process behind it is just we rely on entrepreneurs to tell us. If you are a founder who understands the problem, this is a big market, you're building a good team, and you have really a vision to build a category-defining company, we partner with you. It doesn't matter what stage. Normally we don't do drug discovery because it takes like 15, 20 years and a lot of capital. And we normally don't do things that to begin with requires a lot of capital. Versus today, you really don't need a capital to start a company. I remember in 2000 when Andy Rubin started Danger, he needed like $3 or $4 million to start the company because you have to build your networking, your servers. It wasn't like today that as long as you have a laptop, there's an Amazon and there's a Starbucks, you start a company. I agree with you that there are limited investors in clean tech, but I think if you have a case, you have a technology, there's a big market, there's a huge problem you're solving, there's always investors there. But you shouldn't waste your time talking to people like me who don't understand clean tech. You need to target people who understand this and just network and get to know them. But there's still people who invest in this sector. And I agree with you, there are not as many of them out there. Our office is just right next to Stanford. We're utilizing the community very well, and at any given time we have 4 or 5 Stanford students working for us part-time. And they're pretty incredible, I think, because they want to learn, they're smart, they're at the forefront of technology. So some of the research they do is like Goldman Sachs, but we pay $800 versus $80,000. So I think using your community is very important. If you were at Berkeley, we would have done it at Berkeley, or if you were in Waterloo, we have in Waterloo, UCLA. It happens that we're next to Stanford. This community is just so bright that we use that community really well. So the question is, if I run to somebody who has master, smart, but no expense to be hiring them, almost all of our founders are first-time founders. So it shows that...
working in your team.
Working in our team. It depends on what they can do for us, but yeah, I think the work experience is important, but I think if we see they can add value to our ecosystem, we're always open.
I'm just wondering if you realize any difference between American founders and someone from different culture?
We don't distinguish between American or immigrant. We just look into who they are, regardless of, the country of origin. Just really important to get to know them. The tough question is why you're doing it. And sometimes when you ask why you're doing this, there's not a good answer. The fact that some people just want to start a company because everybody else is doing it. And it's just really early, it's very easy to recognize it. So I think we like founders, regardless of their background, who are really honest to themselves and they understand what they're doing. I think this intellectual honesty is really important. I think exceptional founders pick an exceptional team with a really large market. So I think I just don't want to focus on the exceptional ideas because I always had a tough time understand what is a big idea. I think if you look at some of the companies that are becoming like the best companies ever created, they were not big ideas. I think Facebook wasn't a big idea to begin with. Mark Zuckerberg really built something for his friends and become bigger and bigger. Google was a project at Stanford. Our office actually is next to a home that was the home for Jerry Yang and David Philo, who started Yahoo. And I don't know the story of Yahoo. There were 2 PhD students. At the time that internet started, they started to create this list of the website they need to go, and they started to categorize them, like sports, finance, and became Yahoo. So I don't think, big idea if you want to go to land on the moon, those are big ideas, but the rest is just solving real problems. And I think that's more important than just big ideas. But I think, we like founders who have a really exceptional teams. Those founders can really figure out, just remember the Fitbit for dogs, which is a horrible idea, but an amazing team.
So what did you do with the idea?
What did they do with the idea? I think they just killed it. They were honest with themselves that this product is something nobody wants to use it. And then they tried the second idea, that didn't work. And then throughout they learned something that now they started a big company.
So they spent their money, investor money, to try.
Yeah, this is the story. We invested a small amount for our fund. It was like $50,000 while they were students. So this was in November 2013. By March 2014, they wanted more money. So we agreed to invest $250,000 in the company. Right before we wired the money, they came and they said, "We want to give your money back." And I said, "Why?" They said, "The idea that you invested in is not what we want to do, so we're doing something really different. And we want to give your money back because you invested in that idea." And we said, "No, we invested in you guys, we're going to keep the money in." And luckily, and they stick to it, and now there are over 100 people. This is the company I said there are 245 million phones. So even they wanted to invest in it, we were really attracted to the team. We spent a lot of time to get to know them, their interaction with each other, and the vision they had to build something really extraordinary. So the question is, how do we narrow it down to spend time of certain teams, because we're talking to too many teams? I think there are a lot of things we eliminate early on because we look at their plan and the way even they approach us, it's not the right way. They don't get to know us. They just don't even look at our website, who we are. So it's very clear they haven't done their due diligence on us. So obviously it gives us kind of the red flag. But the ones we think that they're capable to start a company, then we start talking to them. We just get, and actually when I say talking to them, it's just not only in our office presenting. We just take a walk, or we just go watch a game, or we just go have dinner. It just, throughout this, I get to know them. I ask them about who they are, why they're doing it. You learn so much from people's background. I just met a founder who grew up in a town in Minnesota, like 60 people. He said, "My father was the dentist, my mother is the teacher, and my grandpa owned the restaurant." And he managed to go to Harvard, the Harvard Business School after that, and he got a scholarship, but he had this entrepreneur bug in himself that what he did, he used the money for a scholarship to start the company, and he didn't have any place in Cambridge to sleep, and so he managed to live and sleep in Harvard Law School's library for 3 months. So those stories, you just get to know them. We ended up not investing in the company, but I think when you hear these things, you just get to know people. I'm not saying anybody has this story to invest, but I think it was a good invitation. Thank you very much. خیلی ممنونم از